Now this is a photograph here of a very famous, very well-known person. It's sold for $800 to a very big collector. Sad part is, it turned out to be a fake. So today we're going to show you the 10 best ways how to determine if the item is real or fake, including giving you one of the biggest tools out there that will very easily help you to do that. Hey, it's Don. Today we're going to talk about fake items. They're all over the place, and you can find them pretty much for anything now of value these days. Stamps, Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, photos. Comic books are even starting to show up as fake. Fake bills, fake vintage bills. Paper of all sorts shows up that has a very good value if it's not counterfeit, fake, meant to fool somebody, which is what this one more than likely was made to be done. Now this is a real person. This is Thomas Custer. Last name most people will remember from Custer's Last Stand. And Thomas Custer is actually General George Armstrong Custer's brother. There was actually a second brother at the Battle of Little Bighorn as well, Boston Custer. Any one of the Custers are collectible. Obviously, General George Armstrong Custer would be the most collectible. His could have sold for thousands of dollars. This could have just as easily been a fake of his. Now, at first glance, this looks like the real deal. Now, looking at a photo of this, it looks like the real deal. The quality, the detail, everything you would expect is there. Now, it's called a cabinet card. It's on a card that could actually sit there on your cabinet, and I assume that has something to do with why it's called that. Now, it could be any kind of photo you run into. The same principle would be used to tell for pretty much any type of vintage paper. Now, with this one here, a big telltale sign is that there's a spot where it looks like something else was there at one time that runs the length of the card. I think you can just see the difference in color. There's a lighter spot up here. Now it looks like something else possibly was on the face of this card. That's the way it looks to me. Or maybe when they put the photo down, originally there could have been a little bit of glue squeezed out on the side, which does happen, but this is semi-unusual. Now the next thing that I noticed right off the bat, or anybody should notice, and it might be hard to tell on this, the photo itself is extremely thick. A photograph from this time is extremely thin. It's on real thin paper, and then they were mounted onto something because the paper was so thin it would never hold up. So CDVs, carte de vistas, were like smaller size photos, and then the larger size photos would be on a cabinet or a card like this. And to me what this looks like is modern day paper. Modern day printer paper, basically. Very fine quality, very expensive, maybe a Kodak product or something along that line. It's extremely thick, and that was the biggest telltale sign to me. Now what's also odd is that it doesn't look white on the edge of the actual print photo itself, which it should, because no paper is black on the inside. Someone has very obviously colored in the edge of the card black with, say, a permanent ink of some sort. They could have even used a magic marker, who knows. But around the edge of the entire image, they've blackened it in, because one thing you got to know about photos in general, or anything paper prior to, say, 1930-ish or so, is that it wasn't bright. The paper was how the paper was. Modern day paper has fluorescence in it. It has a brightener, a whitener, something that makes the paper brighter, some sort of chemical or a coating or something, and that fluoresces under black light. So if they wouldn't have colored the edge in here, what you would have seen is it probably fluorescing. Now, if you take a black light to it, which we'll do in just a minute here, that'll be a sign. The only problem is a black light's only going to show you on something like this where really no color was added, where there's no image, because it has to show the actual paper itself. So the ink itself covers up the brightener on the page, other than in a few spots. A patron of mine actually sent this to me, so I could take a look at it and see. Obviously, we wanted to know, she wanted to know, I wanted to know if it was real or the person was trying to scam her. Doesn't look that way at all. What it looks like somebody did, though, is they took an X-Acto blade and they pried apart the paper just a little bit there. You can see the white in there. Now what happens with that when you hold it up like that and shine the light on it, shine a black light on it, is it fluoresces. There's also a tiny little spot at the top of the image as well that looks like someone scratched the surface ink off so they could see the paper underneath it. Two telltale signs. Now when you're looking at stuff like this, again, the first thing is to see the image itself. Is the image original? Is it from the time frame? Has it been added onto a card itself? This card, the manufacturer itself on the back, is a vintage original one. Someone has taken a cabinet card that was already out there, bought one that would match the size of this. If you go to some dealers, some antique stores, you can run into hundreds of cabinet cards and just find one that's the right size. They printed the image on a modern day printer and they cut it out, glued it on here after they covered up the edge of it with black ink or something on the sides and mounted it on here. Now it wasn't exact. There was probably a white strip or something from where they ripped off the image itself from, and it didn't quite match, so that's why you see that little gap there. So a major thing to always look for is a gap, a spot where something else may have been ripped off the card itself and then reattached. It can be shaved off with a razor blade if you're very careful. Not something I would ever recommend doing, but you need to know how they can be fake so you can catch them when they're fake. So the card is real, the stamping on the back is real. So right off the bat, you can't pay attention to what the card is. The card's real, so that's not going to help you at all. So then you're going to have to center in on the image itself. Again, looking at that spot up there, one telltale sign there, the edge another telltale sign there. The fact, obviously, that the paper on the inside doesn't match the dullness you would expect from vintage paper because it's been brightened. Now, believe it or not, this is something I carry with me whenever I'm out in public sourcing, pretty much anywhere. It may not always be in my pocket, but it sure as heck is in the console of my car everywhere I go. This is a black light, a little portable black light, basically designed for things like this. Now, I very rarely recommend anybody buying any kind of item specifically, but this is one that I have had for probably a decade and a half of some sort. I've had the long tubes if I couldn't find a small one. This is something that will save you a lot of money, time, trouble, and reputation by getting one of these. I'll have a link down below to one as well if you're interested. It's like less than $10. For the cost, it's going to save you the first time you run into a counterfeit out in the wild. That's very obvious. This will shine a light on those fakes right off the bat. They will fluoresce with this. It's something, again, that you can keep in your pocket. You can carry it with you when you're going around. Baseball cards. A baseball card dealer, a collector, chances are most of them have something like this because when someone tries to fake them, they're using modern technology to print, and it's going to have whitener, brighteners in the paper, at least on the surface coating. Sometimes if you separate or pry the paper apart itself, the inside may not have had the brightener added to it. It's cheaper just to brighten or coat the top surface that's going to be exposed for an image. So sometimes looking at the inside of the paper is not going to mean much difference. One thing on like this photo here, if it was a vintage original photo that was actually of Thomas Custer, it would have been one single layer of paper and I would have no way been able to separate it with an X-Acto blade to see what's on the inside composition of the paper. So that's another thing to look for. It should never be more than one single piece of paper for something like that. Now overall, when you have the black light on it, you might not know what you're looking for on it. Now looking at it, you can see some spots that actually fluoresce at the top edge of it. You can also see some right next to his cheek, a little squiggly line where someone took a blade over the top surface of the image to do it. And those are the distinguishing factors in my book. Now looking at the corner there where I have it pried up, it fluoresces fairly well, much brighter than it should for vintage paper. Now here's a modern day postcard. This is one of mine. I did the artwork and I have a printing company print them for us and then we sell these. Now there's a few spots on here where there's very little ink on it and it really fluoresces immensely, and that should show you the difference in the brightness and stuff. So when I turn on the black light, you're going to see my name fluoresce like it's lit up, as well as some spots on the face. So just a couple small squiggly lines are enough to be able to fluoresce for me to tell that the underlying paper of it is not correct for that age. Now, under the fluorescent light, even when I stick the light away from the card, you can see my name at the bottom lighting up, as well as the face of the card. That's what you're looking for, that fluorescent that lights it up, that looks like it's almost being lit from behind. That's what I look for in anything like this. If I see that, even if it's a little tiny squiggle, I know that the paper underlying under the ink, under the printer ink itself, is not correct. Again, sometimes if you split open the card or anything else like that, even on the back of the card, it has been printed on. So it does fluoresce. It is very bright in real life. Obviously, the room is pitch black right now, and this thing is lighting up very well, and it doesn't look white. It looks like the proverbial ultraviolet look to it, and that's what you don't want. That means it's fluorescing under the light. Now I have the Custer image here right next to an original image from 1904. It's from the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. And what you'll notice is the handkerchief around Custer's neck is extremely bright and fluoresces like a white color. It should not do that. But looking at the 1904 original image, you don't see anything bright white like that. It doesn't stand out. The whole image is clear all the way across. So that's one of the most obvious signs there. And the closer I get the light to it, the brighter that actually gets. It doesn't get that way when I'm close to the original 1904 image, but it does when I'm looking at the Custer image. His scarf stands out beyond belief, and that's a perfect sign that the item is not real at all. Now, with most vintage paper items, you can tell as well if they were altered or colored. Now, here's a 4-color series Zorro issue from the 50s here. Now, someone has colored in the spine to fill in some of the white marks, so it looks in better condition than it actually is. They filled it in. It's very, very hard to tell without putting the black light on it. You can also tell ink and stuff like that on comics. Or, like this first appearance of the Doom Patrol right here from My Greatest Adventure, you can tell if there was any ink, was anything done to it as well. You can also tell if it's a fake one. There are some reproduction comic books out there that people have figured out how they can age them, make it look like it, put them under heat lamps and all sorts of things to try and yellow the pages and the whole works. You can almost always tell stuff like that using a black light, just like the flashlight I showed you there as well. It really does shine. It really does just glare off, which we'll show you here right now. So here's the Zorro itself. And again, the black blends in very well, but looking at it through the light, and I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, instead of it being black, it shines as a real shiny purple. So I can instantly tell that someone has added some marker, ink, or something to the edge of it. Hopefully you can see the purple color as I tilt the page right next to my pinky right there, because that's the biggest telltale sign. You can almost always use a black light to distinguish add-ons, recoloring, or anything else like that, because the ink itself, modern-day ink that would be used to do something like that, wouldn't match the old style of ink. You're going to be able to tell the difference, and that's a key reason why, again, I take a black light with me. So if you send in a comic and it looks great and you don't realize that the ink's in there, they're going to mark it. You're going to spend the money and find out that it's been repaired, retouched, recolored, or something along that line, which isn't good and is going to hurt the value of it and actually waste your time. So before I actually decided to send in My Greatest Adventure, again, the first appearance of the Doom Patrol, I wanted to make sure that nothing's been added. And there isn't a single spot on here that doesn't look right or doesn't match the whole thing. So this has never been touched on, never been re-inked, nothing has been done to it, and that's a key factor here trying to decide. When somebody recolors, retouches up again, that's falsely trying to improve the value of the comic by trying to cover up the defects and the faults in the item. That's why a black light is a very important tool for pretty much any type of collector out there. Sports cards, trading cards of any sort, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, all of that sort of thing. You can touch up those cards as well. Now here's the one that I use it for the most these days. Trying to determine if someone has reproduced a photograph. You'll find people who will go out there, they'll get an original photo like this original World War II era tank photo in Germany, U.S. tank sitting in a major street in Germany somewhere. And this one right here from Outland. This is the movie Outland with Sean Connery in it. Now, obviously, this is a newer produced photo because of the time frame. It came out 80s or late 80s, I guess. Now, we're talking about 1940s. Looking at the images, though, it's very hard to tell, even looking at the back of them. They look very, very close right off the bat. That's another thing you need to look for when you're looking at these sorts of things, because what people will do is they'll buy or download an image like this from online or buy the photo and then make mass quantity of copies of it and then sell the copies as if they are originals from the 40s. Most people out there do not know the difference, and the minute you pull out a black light, they're going to be like, oh, what's this guy doing? They're going to wonder what's going on. But that's the only way you can tell on a large number of these types of photos if they're real. So if you collect real photos like autographed ones and it's supposedly someone who's passed away at a certain point and the photo itself fluoresces, especially on the back, it's not real. So that black light can probably help you distinguish dozens of various things, whether they're real or not. That black light can give you, 3 or 4 ways to tell if something's real. The back of it, the front, how much it fluoresces, the shine, the sheen. Sometimes stuff looks purple or looks weird and doesn't match the rest of the photo. Somebody could have touched up these photos, airbrushed them in, and figured out how to cover up some other differences in it. I've seen that as well. So that's a key thing you need to do. We're going to look at this under black light right now also, so you can see without a doubt instantly which photo is old and which one is new. Because this same 1940s image here, you can find a modern day one that will fluoresce like this Outland photo does, and obviously it's not good when that happens. It's a counterfeit, it's a fake, it's a modern day reproduction being sold as original. So if you find a photo, say, from Casablanca or something that's worth $1,000 or so as an original, and you don't take a black light to it and you buy it, even if it's only being bought for a few bucks to resell, you could be selling a fake without knowing about it. Now here's those same photos under the black light. You can easily see the Outland photo pretty much glows fluorescent all over the place. The 1940s original tank photo at the top does not glow. So when you're looking at the spaceship Outland on there, you can easily tell the difference. Flipping them over, it's a no-brainer. Even if they look the same under normal lights, you can easily tell the difference in the color of the actual backing by using a black light. Day and night here. Obviously they look very close in real light, but here it's just glaringly different and obvious which one is a new production. The black light is the best tool out there for being able to distinguish good from bad in this field. And I don't care which dealers I'm buying from, I let them know I want to make sure it's good before I buy it. If you're going to buy a $1,000 comic book, I'd take it and look at it under a black light, look at it closely and see any differences on it first right off the bat. If you're going to be dealing in some of the cards, Pokemon and stuff, people touch them up when they have wear on them. Some people will flatten them out. They'll press them, just like comic book covers. You may not be able to tell the pressing, but you sure as heck can tell when they've touched it up with modern day ink using the black light. So if you don't have one of these, I would honestly recommend it for any heavy time dealer in anything that's vintage paper, photographs, sports related, or the works. This can even help you distinguish if the autograph ink is old, new in some cases as well. Obviously, if it's on a modern day photo, the autograph, and the person's been dead since the 30s or 40s, chances are it's not legit. And this is the easiest way a novice can tell or a pro can tell any day of the week. I'll have a link down below to a real cheap one, and it comes with batteries for less than $10. You can't go wrong. It's something you need to have in there if you're going to be dealing with this stuff. If you sell it to somebody, you don't want to hurt your reputation by selling something that turns out not to be legit. It happens to us all. It's happened to me. It's happened to my patrons. It happens to people, but a big way to save yourself is by buying something that costs less than $10. But anyway, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully that gave you some ideas, some thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell all your friends.
walks downstairs, a loner in pairs, and makes the slinkity sound. A spring, a marvelous thing. Everyone knows it's Slinky. Everyone knows it's Slinky.
Slinky sold separately in metal and plastic.